And welcome to the Dr. Bob Show right here on PBS. We're going to be spending most of this show talking about three things: exercise, laughter or socialization, and the food that we're eating. So there's going to be a lot of information for you. I'm looking forward to this show. My guest is Dr. Rocio Huet. Dr. Rocio Huet is a board-certified integrative medicine physician. So we're going to have to be learning again about integrative medicine, board-certified. What does that mean? Well, it means a lot to you and a lot to me in staying healthy. We're talking with Dr. Rocio Huet, and we're talking about nutrition as one of the important parts of wellness. Rocio, welcome to Dr. Bob's Show.
Thank you.
Tell me about nutrition. Why is that important to the overall health of a human being?
Number one, I want to say at first that as physicians, we didn't learn a lot about nutrition.
Almost nothing.
And I think that in my mind anyway, it was almost this idea that calories in, calories out.
That's what it was.
And that's all it was. It was that simple an equation. That is so not the case that it astounds me to this day that we didn't learn the fundamentals that food really is the first medicine. And the reason that nutrition is so important is because that is what fuels everything that happens in our body, right? All of the biochemical processes that occur are because of what we put in. So we need carbohydrates because that is the fuel that runs the muscles in the brain, right?
The potatoes and the bread and the things that we've been sort of maybe avoiding.
Yes, although I will say complex carbohydrates are probably better than just simple carbohydrates.
What does the word complex carbohydrate mean?
That it is not a processed flour, let's say, that just has like a piece of white bread, that it would have more of the grains in it, that it wouldn't have lost the density of the food. So, for instance, a sweet potato is a complex carbohydrate as well, right? So we want those foods because they don't cause as great a rise in glucose in the body. And one of the major problems we're having now in this country is that everyone is eating a poor diet, right? And we don't even like to say diet anymore. It's not a diet, it's how you eat. It's how you fuel your body. And what we worry more about, I think, is how we look, right? Not how we feel.
Correct.
And how we feel is related to, are we fueling enough with the energy producers like the carbohydrates, protein, because protein is involved in almost every biochemical process, right, in our bodies. It's what our muscles are fueled with, right? It's in every cell. It's in a lot of what allows us to make neurotransmitters, which are the things that help our mood feel better. So if we don't eat right, then we end up with diabetes, with cancer, with neurodegenerative diseases. We end up being overweight. But it's not just about weight, because calories are not the only thing. It's about what's happening in terms of inflammation. And inflammation in the body, when you have an acute illness, you want inflammation because you're healing something, right? The problem comes when we eat the wrong foods and we have chronic inflammation. And then the body's responding all the time to what it thinks might be foreign, right? And we set up a lot of our health problems because of that. So we need protein, carbohydrates, good fats, and a lot of fiber.
Are there good fats?
There are good fats.
Good, because to me, I go by the old axiom, if it doesn't taste good, there's not enough fat in it. But it's the kind of fat.
That's right. And fats are actually what keep you satisfied too, that make you feel full and don't make you feel hungry all the time, right?
So sometimes it's good to have a little fat down in the tummy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like nuts, right? Avocados. I mean, there are good fats.
Saturated trans fats are non-saturated,
Right. We don't really want saturated fats or trans fats, right? You want monounsaturated if you can. I mean, some of the polyunsaturated are okay. So we're talking avocado oil, for instance, right? We use a lot of olive oil. And those are probably the oils that are the best for cooking, right?
So when you use olive oil in the skillet, you're putting liquid fat in there, but it's good fat.
That's right. And not going to cause us to have a lot of heart disease, which is really what these other fats are causing, right?
What kind of heart
more
disease?
deposition of plaque, like heart attacks, right? Like strokes.
Cholesterol deposition.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you know, we think about, we don't want somebody to have a heart attack, so they need to stop eating so many fats and they need to go on a medicine to lower their cholesterol. It's not only cholesterol, right? Most of the time, a lot of it is these processes of the sugar going too high. Then we have insulin that is made by the pancreas to try and bring the sugar, right, out of the bloodstream into the cells to be utilized. But when you have too much of that, because we're all eating, I shouldn't say it like that, but many of us are eating too many donuts. You know, we have a lot of donut shops. You know, we're eating a lot of candies and cookies.
Yeah, they're snack foods, and the pharmaceutical reps bring us donuts and bring us bad fats in the table. They're doing a better job of getting us more lettuce and more lean meats.
Right.
That are good.
That are good, that's right. And so, but the problem is if you eat too many of a certain kind of food, like these more simple sugars, like the candies and the cakes and the cookies, pretty soon the body doesn't know what to do with all that sugar, so it starts storing it, which is a good thing. I mean, we want to be able to store energy, and when we were prehistoric, man, that was the way we had to eat, right? Because it was food or famine. So you ate a lot, you stored it, and then when you didn't have it, you utilized it. Unfortunately, that's not the way life is now, at least not for some of us. Some people don't have enough, but
So essentially it's going to go to adipose tissue, fat tissue, and that may be one of the biggest reasons why people get overweight. Their BMI goes up.
Yes, but I don't really, the body mass index, that BMI, is not really as good as looking at body composition. So we actually in our office, and we have people who know a lot more about nutrition than I do, 2 dietitians, but this machine measures your skeletal muscle mass, your body fat percentage, but more importantly, it is the visceral fat. It is the fat inside the abdomen, the fat that is in the liver, for instance, because now we have this epidemic of fatty liver. That is where inflammation is set up. And that visceral fat is what we really focus on. Subcutaneous fat, like that you can pinch, you know, your love handles, well, some people may not like that, but that is not as dangerous as the fat inside the abdomen.
How do you find that figure for?
In our case, we have this machine that actually does it through plethysmography, because you can even have some people who look thin, right? I mean, on the surface, if you look at them, they don't seem overweight and they look pretty good, but if you do their body composition, they actually have excess visceral fat.
That must be a eye-opener when you do plethysmography. And it measures increased visceral fat, and you would have no idea of that.
Correct. Some people don't.
So then what do you do?
So then we can sit down with people and say, you know what, we need to lose this. And it'll also tell us, do you need to gain more muscle? Do you need to lose fat? And if so, it tells us what is your basal metabolic rate at rest, right? So I know how many calories you're expending at rest, and what is our goal? And then we can figure, and not every person, that's the other thing I wanted to say about nutrition, there must be hundreds of books on this is the right diet for everyone to eat.
There's one a year.
Oh, I'm sure there are more than that.
That becomes a craze.
Yes. There is no one diet that everyone is going to be able to follow, because everyone is different. Everyone's metabolism is different. For instance, if you are a diabetic, you're going to want to eat less of your calories and carbohydrates, more in protein, for instance, than maybe someone else could that runs all the time, marathon runners, let's say. So we really have to look at the individual and say, what is it that you want to do in your life? How much energy are you expending? And let's at least get that visceral fat down below 10. I personally don't care if somebody's what would be considered ideal weight, right?
Correct.
And in fact, if you have a few extra pounds on you, it would probably hold you in good stead if you got sick. But we do want that chronic inflammation to not be present.
I want to flip over to another important topic. We talked about calories in, calories out, the importance of exercise. How important is exercise in total health and wellness?
Exercise is probably the absolutely most important thing that keeps us all healthy.
And that's what we're going to be talking about when we come back. Exercise, the number one thing that probably does the best at keeping us totally healthy. I'm learning too much here. Hello, I'm Dr. Bob Overholt, here to encourage you and your family to get out and play in our Knoxville area parks. Knoxville has dozens of parks and more than 85 miles of trails. There are picnic shelters, ball fields, tennis courts, and disc golf courses, dog parks, fishing ponds, and skateboard parks, trails for hiking and mountain biking, boat rentals, you name it, Knoxville has it. To find a park or greenway near you, visit OutdoorKnoxville.com. And get out and play, it's good for your health. Wouldn't it be great if you never had to see your doctor because you were so healthy? Hello, I'm Dr. Robert Overholt, and I'm here to discuss the governor's initiative for a healthier Tennessee. Remember to be exercising on a regular basis and eat better foods, more fruits, more vegetables, and if you're smoking, stop. I'm Dr. Robert Overholt for a healthier Tennessee. Exercise is the number one most important thing, but we didn't have time to talk about what we should be eating for breakfast, lunch, and supper. And that's a very important part. So let's spend some time on that. What should Dr. Bob be eating for breakfast?
It can vary from day to day, but I would say you need to get enough protein, right? And right now you wanted to build some muscle mass, and everybody as we age loses muscle, so we need to eat more protein. So for instance, you could have 1 egg with the yolk and 3 egg whites in addition to that, and that would give you 24 grams of protein. You should have a little salad maybe, or sauteed vegetables on the side, lots of colors, some cabbage, bell peppers, all right? And if you wanted a small piece of sourdough bread or something like that, you could have all of that.
Can I toast it?
Yes. And if you don't put a lot of butter, you could put just a little bit of butter on there, or some olive oil if you'd like.
And olive oil would be great. When people get used to it, it really is pretty good. Okay, that's breakfast.
Yes.
So we got to increase our protein. It's what fuels the fire to give us the energy for the body to function well and for us to stay healthy. What for lunch?
Okay, so for instance, for lunch, if you're not lactose intolerant, you could have some cottage cheese with some fruit, and that gives you protein, right? You always need to have some vegetables too, so if you would rather have some carrots and some celery, right, and some salad, hummus, chickpeas are very good, right? So you could have some of that as well. And you don't always have to have bread. You could wrap, if you wanted a sandwich with some meat, right? You could have some of that and some cheese, but you can vary things. This could be what your lunch would be.
So
sometimes
just because we have a lot
soup.
of protein for breakfast doesn't mean we shouldn't also reduplicate that for lunch.
That's right, because especially as we age, we need protein, so we need to make sure we're getting it.
Does that make our bones stronger, or why do we need it as we get older?
Because we lose muscle mass, all of us, as we age. And if you don't, and that's what we're going to talk about in exercise too, if you start low in your muscle mass and you don't eat enough protein, the slope of the line is really steep. And by the time you're, say, 70, 80, then you're not getting around. You're almost in the disabled section. So you want to start high, and you want to eat enough, and you want to keep exercising, which we'll talk about, and that keeps the slope of the line not so steep, so that you end up with good muscle mass, so you can keep moving.
Supper?
So for supper,
Our evening meal?
yes, you could eat a piece of chicken. I always like some fish, fatty fish, especially salmon, right? Mackerel is good for you. And that has probably 30 grams of protein right there, right? And again,
how big a piece of salmon?
Oh, you're talking 4 to 6 ounces.
I love salmon, and there's so many good ways to cook it without just the salmon. Okay.
Yes. And then you want some more vegetables. Brussels sprouts, if you like that. Do you like kale, asparagus? All of those things are excellent.
Asparagus?
Yes.
I love asparagus too. So
artichokes.
You're giving me a lot of good foods that are healthy foods that are important that I eat, and not try and skip it to lose weight.
Exactly. So you want the calories, but the other key thing is, and you were asking a little bit ago about this whole concept of time-restricted eating. Some people do well with doing a longer fast, if you want to call it that, than 12 hours. Everyone should eat their evening meal at a certain hour, preferably before, let's say, 7. I know it doesn't always work that way, but if you can, that would be good, especially if you're going to go to bed 3 hours later. There should be at least a 12-hour window between that evening meal and the next morning's meal. Now, if you can do a 14, then a 16, and even an 18-hour window a couple of times a week, even better, because your body does not want to always be seeing fuel, because then the pancreas has to produce insulin constantly. You want a time where you're not eating. So if you don't do better than a 12-hour, then at least don't be snacking all day. So try and keep your meals to your meals.
To me, that's really, really wonderful. When I go, the older you get, the more you go to, I call it the 4:30 to 5 group, because as people get older, they eat earlier, and that's good because when they come home, they've got a period of time where they feel full from the meal they had, and they go without eating, and that fits into that period of time we're talking about. Let's go right. So those are 3 basic meals. The last time I looked at it, I sit down and eat 7 or 8 days a week. So we've got to know that we've got to get the divisions of food: protein, carbohydrates, and fats, and they're all okay if you're doing them properly.
Correct.
All right, let's go to exercise. Why is exercise so important? The most one important thing you said.
Yes, because exercise, if you do it, will lower your rates of cancer, will lower your rates of heart disease, will lower Alzheimer's disease and neurodegenerative issues, will keep your bones strong so that when we are older and we fall, we don't break a hip, right, and have those problems, because it increases your mood. It helps us with our neurotransmitters, okay? So an exercise is important to prevent heart disease, because you are utilizing your muscles, which then allows you to have better metabolism and metabolic pathways, and it also keeps your heart stronger so that it pumps better. Now, genetics, I can't argue that they aren't 20 to 30% probably of how people are going to potentially have problems. But it also keeps you from having so much arthritis, inflammation. It decreases the inflammatory response. So yes, maybe genetically we're predisposed to certain things like heart disease or Alzheimer's, but just because it's our genes, it doesn't mean it's our destiny. So we can try and mitigate that with how we live. And the most important thing is, for me, is that what do we want to do in our lives? How much activity do you want to do? The less you do, the more you hurt. The less you do, the more inflammation you have. And that's chronically that inflammation that causes all those diseases.
So as I avoid food because I want to lose weight and I'm doing the wrong things, my knees can start aching. You get inflammation of the knees, of the joints, of the shoulder, of the body in
Yes.
general.
Yes.
So what we've got to do is fuel the fire with protein and other good foods such as carbohydrates and fats.
Right, which also give us, all of those rainbow of colors give us our vitamins to a great extent, right, because of the microbiome, which is helping us make all these things. So you want the right organisms in your gut. And they have enzymes that are really important in our biochemical pathways, and ATP is our energy source. So we need all of that in order to have enough energy to do the things we want to do.
So tell me how exercise prevents cancer.
Okay, so
A lot of data says that's true.
that's right. So one of the things that it does is that we know for a fact that if you have elevated sugar and if you have insulin resistance, that increases your risk of having cancers, because cancer to a certain extent is these cells that have now dysregulated, right? So the exercise helps autophagy, which is killing off all those older cells, right, that could potentially become cancer cells. It decreases inflammation because of the hormones that are set up, right, with the exercise that we do. So and if you maintain your better weight, then you have less risk of cancer.
When I look at the overall picture of people in our society that eat and try and diet to get skinny, or they eat the wrong foods and they get fatter and fatter, or they use diet beverages which fool the body to eat more food. Lots of bad things. How do we learn how to get the proper nutrition? Is there a class? Is there something we can do?
Yes, absolutely. We try and do some group classes, and I'm sure
Who's we?
We might practice because we have the 2 dietitians, but I do know there are other dietitians in town as well. There's also online information, lots of good online information, lots of good podcasts.
Example?
Okay, so for instance, I would argue that I don't know if anyone knows who Mark Hyman is, one of the leading people in functional medicine, and he has a very good podcast called Pharmacy, F-A-R-M-A-C-Y. Okay, so he often will bring on experts who talk about all of these things, right? There are books now. 2 of the newest books. One is called Outlive by Peter Attia. It's about longevity, but also health span, not lifespan. Talks a lot about nutrition. Again, there are many good books out there. And so, if people want to know, I guess they could let us know, like, what is really a good one. But even Mayo Clinic, Harvard Newsletter, I mean, they have many good things that people can read about.
Does Google know?
If you Google, you could get all kinds of people who really are not necessarily that educated in this area.
So let's go to laughter, socialization.
What we mean by socialization would be that you need to have around you a social support system, right?
What would that be?
For instance, it could be your family, it could be a nice group of friends, it could be your church, it could be wherever you are connected. It could be a club that, for instance, like you said, the country club, but it could be the Rotary Club. It could be where you have people that you feel comfortable with and that you feel that you can be yourself and that you can interact with and that would have your back potentially if you needed something, that you trust.
A friend.
Yes.
A true friend.
A true friend. And some people loneliness and having a social support system are 2 different things, because some people are lonely even when they are with people, not just alone. But COVID really brought this, to our attention so much that when you look at predictors of mortality, the people who have the highest social interaction, and it doesn't have to be a large group, as long as it's a strong support, few people, they are the ones who actually, they have less mortality even over people who have diabetes, heart disease, drink too much alcohol. That is so important. So that's what we talk about, having this group of friends. So if you know someone who doesn't have that, it would be good for us to try and see how can we help anyone get that group around them.
Laughter,
Oh, absolutely, fundamentally important. And about the socialization too, let me just say, laughter, you get oxytocin, right? It's a hormone that is the bonding hormone. So you need to be able to touch people. During COVID, when no one was touching or people were in their homes on Zoom, you don't make that hormone unless you can actually have that sense that you are connected. But laughter also is important for the neurotransmitters. It helps pain. If you guffaw laugh, it will improve your mood. We have to have smiling and laughter and connectedness. Yes.
To me, laughter is a very important medicine in medicine, as is everything else you've talked about. You're amazing to me. I realize that I've shortchanged you in not allowing you to talk another 3 days on this. But basically what we're saying is exercise and eating properly, and we'll talk about sleep in another time. I've got you lined up for another show because I'm not giving you time to rest. Thank you for coming to the Dr. Bob Show. It's been a blessing to our viewers and a blessing to me. So I hope that you'll be able to come back. I've got you lined up to the Dr. Bob Show on PBS.
Thank you. And this is what I think is healthcare.
Yeah, that's
right?
correct. I'm sitting here just dying to say, what are the different facets of medicine in your practice? The internal medicine, the nutritionist, the psychology evaluation.
And mind-body, we call it mind-body, and acupuncture actually, which is a modality, but we use that as well.
Yeah, the world has so much out there for us to learn. Thank you for coming and helping us.
Thank you.